In today's video, I'm going to be covering 5 genius tips for raising chickens. Some of these you might know, some of these you might not know. Be sure to comment down below how many of these you already know and how much of this is fresh information. So the next time I do one of these videos, I can adjust exactly to that. So first tip of the day is adding an automatic coop door. Now, do you want to know something? If you're feeling like really under the weather or sick, whatever, you might not really want to go outside and care for your chickens. You want to go out there as few times as possible and just sit inside all day, recovering from whatever might be plaguing you. However, an automatic coop door makes sure that you have to go outside as few times as possible as long as your door is working. Most of these range from like, you can get like a Walmart one for like $30, or you can get one that actually works for like around $100. So they range as to how high quality you want the coop door to be, but they're incredibly useful if executed properly, because it'll automatically open at sunrise and close at sunset. And it's also incredibly useful for those of you that just don't really like going outside in the morning to let them out, but you don't want them to like wait until like 10 a.m. to let them outside. This automatic coop door eliminates that. And there's even some newer ones, because these are ones from 2022. There's some brand new ones that have higher technology. Ours just has some buttons that'll adjust like that sort of stuff. It has sensors. Some newer ones can have like a clock on it, so you could tell where it wants to like open and close. I'd say it's pretty useful. Now, the second tip, when it's put on paper, it sounds terrible, but it's actually a pretty useful tip. And I'll tell you one thing about this tip, is that you do not want to interpret this tip incorrectly, because it sounds bad at first, but it really isn't. And that's not putting the feed and water in the chicken coop directly at night. Now, I will say, if you're going to keep them in that coop for a longer period than just nighttime, then yeah, you could probably go ahead and put the feed and water in the chicken coop. However, if they're just there at night and laying eggs, it eliminates a whole lot of messes that could potentially spawn into that chicken coop due to potential like chickens like flying off the roosting bar, fighting over space, or just having some fun in there, all in all. And so that's why we don't have our feeder and water in the chicken coop, because they don't really need it in there, unless they're like spending many days in there, like there's like a hurricane hitting and we don't want them going outside because trees and stuff like that. And then we might put them in the chicken coop and prepare them for, and like give them some food and water and stuff like that in there. It's also important to know, like, it's also really important to know, like, if they're like younger, then you're probably going to have to put the feed and water in the coop, because they'll probably spend a day or two in there to get themselves adjusted to that brand new chicken coop, which we'll talk about in just a minute. However, I will say this tip is actually really useful, and it helps prevent messes. Most people clean their chicken coops about once every week or so. Some people might be able to go once every 2 weeks if like you really can, but I recommend not going above 10 days. Because after that point, the chicken coop just becomes a disgusting mess that's a little bit harder to clean out. So I personally recommend cleaning it once every like 6 to 10 days if you have to. So that's cool. Now, my third tip of the day is to keep your chickens confined to a chicken coop if they're going like outside for their first time or whatever. Some people just throw their chickens outside. I'll bet you a lot of you know this one, and probably have even executed it yourself. And if you're a new chicken owner, this one's pretty essential. So you don't just want to throw your chickens outside and say, oh, I get used to it. You'll find your way into the chicken coop, because every single night you're going to have to manually put them back in the chicken coop. And if you want to know something, you move your chickens out usually around 8 to 10 weeks old. 8 to 10 week old chickens are not as friendly as like 16 to 20 week old chickens. So it's a prime example as to why I'd personally recommend that you put them in their chicken coop for like a day or two, usually on like a nice and cool day, so that way the coop doesn't get too hot. Just get them adjusted to that new chicken coop, tell them where they need to sleep, get them adjusted to their new positions on the roosting bar. For that first night, you'll find them just scattered across the chicken coop. And for that second night though, that's when you see them get themselves more adjusted. And that third or fourth night is probably gonna be like their last night. I wouldn't recommend doing anything about 4 days in that chicken coop, because like after that point, you're just keeping them in there for no reason. So that's why I'd personally recommend keeping them in there for like a day to maybe 3 days, but nothing past 4. Because at that point, it's just because at that point they just are confined in that chicken coop, and you just want them to get them know the premises of the coop before you can let them outside. It's really useful, and it'll allow for them to like learn the way of the coop a little bit better and manually put themselves away instead of you having to put them away. Our next tip that we have here is that like if you're like really wanting to like see how good they could do in terms of lawnmower, I'll be brief with this one. If you like want to see if they're actually good at like mowing your lawn down a little bit, you can set them up in an area like what we'll sometimes do that like hasn't been mowed, and I'll mow it down pretty quickly, usually in about a week, which I mean a lawnmower could probably do that area in maybe like 90 seconds, but hey, at least they're mowing down your lawn for you. So shout out my chickens for helping me mow my lawn, because sometimes you just don't want to do it when it's like 110 degrees. Today it's literally like It's literally only 89 degrees right now, but it literally feels like it's in the hundreds. It's genuinely so bad. It's humid out. The chickens, so shout out to them for actually still doing their work even though it's really hot out. I know you're under there, bro. You're not supposed to be under the trailer. And this last one is a little bit less of like tips and like more like an advice from like me to you. And that is to keep your chickens entertained at all times of the day. But you could do that just by simply installing like an area for them to roost in their chicken yard, give them some treats, give them some attention. Give them something that'll give them some attention, because they love attention. They're literally the most attention-seeking farm animals I can think of. I mean, there's some farm animals I haven't quite yet began having around here, but like, hey, I mean, they're at least pretty nice to have around, I'd say. So that's pretty cool. So I just want to say that if you ended up enjoying this video, there's a video on the screen for you right now that are patiently awaiting for you to click. It literally teaches you the specifics of building a chicken coop. I'll see you there.